Welcome to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch podcast. Join us on our journey as we recap, examine, and critique the series episode by episode from the beginning.
We'll be keeping our podcast spoiler free, so we welcome fans, new and old, to join us in watching and reflecting on one of our favorite shows.
Currently, we're on season 3.
I'm your host, Jess Sabanko.
And I'm your host, Mia Sobanko.
Now let's get into this week's episode.
This week, we're discussing season 3, episode 16, Death Takes a Halliwell. It originally aired on March 15th, 2001, and had 5.42 million viewers.
So we start this episode, we're at the beach, and Prue's taking pictures of the water, and Phoebe's like building a sandcastle, which she names the Kingdom of Phoebeville. And Prue turns and takes a picture of her. Then they get up and they start walking down the beach together. And Prue starts talking about how she doesn't get why Phoebe spent an hour making something that's just going to get destroyed. And she says, but Phoebeville will forever live in the hearts of the villagers who came to love it. Then she asked about Prue's bah hum attitude and says that they came there to have fun. And Prue says they came to give Piper and Leo alone time and that the beach isn't her idea of a good time. She says, maybe you're too young to remember, but this is where Grams brought us after Mom's funeral to try and cheer us up. I know that you love the beach, and I didn't want to ruin that for you, but something about the sand and the ocean, it makes me angry. And Phoebe says, why does it make you angry? Prue says, doesn't Mom's death make you angry? And Phoebe shakes her head. She says, it makes me sad. Prue says, well, I don't really do sad that well, I didn't even cry at her funeral. She says, so seeing Mom at Piper's wedding and now the beach. Prue says, yeah. So I'm sorry if I've been a little cranky. Phoebe says, say no more. Princess Prue has spoken. By orders of the Queen, that's me, Phoebeville in all its glory will be abandoned for greener pastures and 2 lattes. And Prue's like, oh, all hail the Queen. And Phoebe starts to leave, and Prue stops to take a couple more photos. Then we cut up like on top of these rocks, and we see that this woman is taking photos of them. And Prue notices her and takes a picture of her, and then notices that there's this like this dark shadow behind her. And Prue tries to get her attention to tell her about it, but the woman like runs away when Prue calls for her. So Phoebe comes back and Prue tells her about what happened and says that the shadow seemed demonic. And Phoebe says, so much for the lattes. Looks like there's a new demon in town.
So I love this little intro. Do want to point out for the random woman that was standing there with the shadow, like when we find out her role later, she's not doing a very good job at hiding herself.
She's about as stealthy as the Charmed ones, if I'm being honest.
Seriously. Like that was when we find out her purpose, it's it's kind of hilarious later. But aside from that, the whole, I think Phoebe's being very cute in this scene. I love her energy and the way she's talking about things. And we see Prue here having another struggle with it coming to her parents, And I feel like every time she kind of learns this lesson or goes through it, she still feels it again. Like we see her go through it when it comes to parents again and again and again. It's not something that she ever really gets past, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting here is I think in other moments where we've seen her kind of like having to deal with something relating to her mom's death or her dad's abandonment, like with her dad's abandonment, we've seen that feeling of anger come to the surface before. But with her mom, it's always been like just her being very, very shut down. So I think it's interesting here that she talks about how their mom's death makes her angry, because I think that is a go-to emotion for Prue. So it totally tracks with her character for me.
It totally fits. And I guess that is a big step up to the fact that she is kind of more willing to open up about those things without being pressed or just immediately shutting down. So that is kind of a big step up for her too.
And I like the way that, again, like you were saying, she's having this really open conversation with Phoebe here about her feelings and about what's going on with her. I also like, because I remember last episode we had a conversation about how she could treat Phoebe and Piper more like the adults that they are and not try to protect them from things so much, so that she is, again, telling her these things that she's always protected her from, right? Like she didn't want to ruin that Phoebe loves the beach, so she never like mentioned
Right.
how she felt about it. So I think that that openness is also another growth we're seeing from Prue here.
Yeah, I totally see that, and it tracks from the last episode we saw and that discussion we had about everything. Also, I love how she's like, maybe you were too young to remember. Like, wasn't Phoebe literally like 10 months old when their
Yeah,
mom
like
died?
she was at most 2, so
Like, yeah, she was definitely a little too young to remember that. And then, again, I'm looking forward to seeing what this shadow is and why, you know, it's so important for this woman or to Prue, who I assume that's gonna kind of be focused on based on the
yes.
intro. So then we move to Cole's old apartment and we see a demon floating across the room and then steps down to the ground. And this older woman is asking the second demon about them living here and starts talking about alternative lifestyle, meaning them living together. And saying that she doesn't care. She just doesn't like loud tenants. And she's like the last tenant, Mr. Turner. He was a little strange. And then, of course, he disappeared without a trace. But he was nice and quiet, so I liked him fine. And the guy that was floating opens Cole's demonic little closet that we saw and says that there's demonic residue all over the altar. And the woman's like really confused. And then they start acting like she should have known this and start accusing her of like keeping secrets about Cole. And then the first one bites her neck, and then the other one's like, don't try to talk. Your brain stem will do the talking for you. And then her body drops to the floor. And the one of them says to the one that bit her, like, is Balthazar alive? And he says, she didn't know, but she knows someone who might. Interesting.
Interesting. So obviously we have some type of demons, vampire type demons, I'd say, looking for Cole here. A lot of this landlady's stuff is obviously used for comedy. I mean, the jokes about an alternative lifestyle because, it's just so funny to be gay, of course, had to come up because it was 2001. But also the way she's like, I don't care that Cole disappeared without a trace. Like, he was quiet, so that was great for me. Like, so
Yeah,
funny.
I liked him great because he didn't make any noise.
May have been a murderer, not sure, but he was
Yeah.
quiet, so
In a
good.
lot of trouble with the law, but you know what? He was a good tenant. I respect him. It's so funny to think that, like, as a demon pretending to, be good and having to, like, blend into society, that he took that extra step of, like, getting a place to live and getting a job where he actually has to, like, pay rent each month. Like, it's just, like, really funny to imagine him doing that all for the sake of, like, trying to get to the charmed ones, like his
Right?
original
Because he could have
intentions.
easily just like killed somebody and lived in their house.
Yeah, oh my god, 100%. Or just like gone back to the underworld or wherever he came from every night, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of hilarious to me.
But also the way like these demony guys were just like thought she would know something. Like, why would she know?
They obviously didn't spend enough time with humans. Like, what do you expect from a mortal who literally is just trying to sell a house? You think that she's just gonna have all this information about him? Like, the assumption is crazy. They just want an excuse to kill her.
Probably. But the funny thing is, like, they knew enough about humans to go there pretending that they were interested in the apartment, but didn't know enough to know that she probably didn't know Cole was a demon.
Yeah, very interesting setup we have going on here. I guess they had to do something to kind of get these demons introduced into the episode and like what they're looking for.
So after that, we have the theme. Then we go to the manor and we're in the entryway. And Piper's in front of the mirror talking to Leo. She says, shouldn't I be wearing white or something? I mean, it is a white lighter reception and all. He's like, Piper, what you have on is perfect. You're beautiful. All my friends are going to love you if we could ever get there. And she doesn't get why Prue and Phoebe can't come. He's like, I can orb you because you're my wife, but I'm not a cosmic taxi for the whole family. Then Phoebe comes down the stairs and starts laughing and is like, you said wife. And they're about to leave, and Phoebe asks about Prue's shadow thing. And Leo says they'll be a call away if it attacks. And then him and Piper hug and they orb out. Then Prue walks in and says she's going to Daryl to see if he can help her find the woman, and that the shadow didn't show up in the pictures and Phoebe didn't find it in the book. Then the doorbell rings and Phoebe goes to get it.
Piper and Leo officially married. Husband and wife over here. They're so cute.
I love how like now like the elders are like throwing a reception for them when before they were like, we don't want you guys getting married.
I know. And like how it's also like I didn't know that I thought that it was like a rule where she's not really supposed to go up there. Aside from that, it just kind of seemed like more of a cute moment and pushing the plot of like this whole shadow demon thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that, so far they're not finding anything, but they're not giving up on that yet.
And again, I love here that she's trusting in Prue, even though again she wasn't the one that saw it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like same thing with the last episode with her dreams. It seems like they're kind of learning to trust each other's instincts more and more.
Yeah, no more of the, are you sure you're not overtired and
Yeah,
imagining
like
this demon?
that's honey, you really need to get some sleep because that could not be like they've been doing. Yeah.
Love to see that growth.
Yes. So in the doorway, Phoebe answers the door and it is Reece, Inspector Reece Davidson. And Phoebe's like, Inspector, how can I help you? And he says, you can tell me where to find Cole Turner. I know he's alive and I know he's in town. And she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, really. His former landlady was found brutally murdered at his address. And Phoebe's like, Mrs. Owens, oh my God, that's awful. And he says, oh, awful like you can't imagine. And Phoebe says, Cole didn't do this. The Cole Turner I know wouldn't. And he cuts her off and he's like, the Cole Turner you know? Now, see, that just doesn't sound like the words of a woman who claims her boyfriend left her without a word 4 months ago. And then they just kind of stare at each other because he kind of got her there. And she's like, I know what you're thinking, and I know what this looks like, and I'm so sorry for what happened today. And then he cuts her off again and is like, you're sorry? Her eyes were frozen open in terror. Her skull was punctured in 2 places, and by the time the police had gotten there, most of her brain had spilled out onto the floor. Be sick, be horrified, but don't stand there lying to me and say you're sorry. And then Prue comes in and says, all right, wait a second. You're talking to her like she did it. And he says, if she's lying to protect Turner, then she may as well have. Now, for the last time, where is he? And Prue looks away, and then Phoebe says nothing. And then he says, I'm going to find him, Miss Halliwell. And then I'm going to bust his ass. And then I'm going to bust yours. And then he goes, and Prue walks closer to Phoebe and asks if she's okay.
So, my crush, Reece Davidson, is back. Who do I not have a crush on this season? Let's be
I know.
real.
Everybody. Yeah, love Reece. I mean, I love how, like, aggressively he's here, like, all amped up about it, not even giving her a chance at this point, because he's tried before, and from his perspective, what do you expect? You know, he knows these people are lying about something, hiding something, and this guy's missing, and now all of a sudden, people in his life, or his old life when he was living there, like, are starting to mysteriously die, and I don't know, it's like, if I was him, I'd be just as, like, irritated, I feel like.
The thing is, I'm wondering, like, what he thinks Cole's motivation to kill his former landlady would be.
That's true. And also, the way he describes her death, her skull was punctured in 2 places. Like, I'm pretty sure he just... Yeah, but that was her neck.
No, it was, like, here.
Oh.
Like, the back of her head near her neck.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, like, I thought it was, like, lower, like, by her shoulder. I was like,
no,
what do
no,
you
no.
mean?
It was more like the back of her head. Also, I love how I pointed like this isn't an audio medium.
Well, I can see you, so it's fine.
Sorry, listeners.
All right, well then my mistake.
But
But
also, like, how big were these punctures in her neck that her brains were coming out? Gross.
I know it sounds really disgusting. They must have like crazy vampire teeth
No,
ish.
literally. Also, the
Um,
way that, like, Prue jumps in to defend Phoebe, love to see it.
yeah, I was just about to say that's cute, especially for someone who literally hates Cole with a passion.
Yes. But I mean, getting him in trouble means getting Phoebe in trouble. So obviously she wouldn't try to
Exactly.
do anything there. The only cop they trust is Daryl, you know what I mean?
Of course. The only other cop that exists in this universe.
Of course. No, we saw SWAT team last episode. There are other
Oh,
cops.
you're right, you're right. How could I forget?
So then we go outside and the sisters watch as Reese walks up to a car and we see the woman who was taking photos at the beach get out and Prue recognizes her and again she sees the shadow but Phoebe can't see it. And Phoebe asks if Davidson is having them followed, and Prue's more concerned about what's following the woman and why Phoebe can't see it. And Phoebe wonders if it's at all connected to the landlady's death. And then we see the car drive off. And Prue says that she's going to follow her to protect her and that she must be meant to fight it since she can see it. And Phoebe tells her to be careful. She says she will. And she tells Phoebe that she should find Cole and see if he knows anything about the shadow thing.
So here we are finding out who that lady was. And stealth mode not quite nailing it so far. Like if you're supposed to be almost like to follow them around and kind of take pictures and like see what they're up to. You don't want to make it so obvious that you're watching them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one reason I'll give her a pass is like she was dressed very normally at the beach, right? And like making it seem like she was like Prue taking photos of the beach. Because Prue even like took a photo of her, you know what I mean? Like you might just do that if you see someone at the
Yeah,
beach. But yeah, at the same time, it wasn't the most like undercover incognito photo taking we've ever seen.
right. For her to just like, as soon as Prue even looks at her, just to start running away
That's what made
is
it
like,
suspicious. Yeah.
yeah, like very dramatic for no reason at all.
But I mean, I
And then
guess in her
showing up
head,
outside their house and
yeah.
with Reese.
But I guess in her head, like, there's something dangerous about the sisters, so that's probably why she ran away. But like,
Yeah, she's a little new to the game. She'll get it
yeah,
if she makes it long enough.
spoilers. No, really just seeing their plan, setting the plot going forward. Yeah,
Right. And we kind of see that this shadow thing is pretty much directly only related to Prue because she is the only one that can see it right now.
yeah, which is interesting and definitely has me curious about what it's going to turn out to be, and if it
Me
is in
too.
fact connected to the vampire guys or if it's something different.
Exactly. Okay, so now we move to the mausoleum, and Cole's like, I better get out of here. And Phoebe's like, what? Why? And he says, because it's getting too dangerous. And she's like, so you're just going to disappear again? And he says, if that's what it takes to keep you safe. And she says, what about keeping me sane, Cole? I'm not going to lose you again. And he says, some demon obviously knows I'm alive, or at least suspects it. Why else would they have killed my landlady? And if they killed her, they'll kill anybody they have to get to me. And she's like, that's exactly why you cannot leave. We have to stop them before they hurt anybody else, or before they hurt you. And then he steps closer to her and says, they're after me, Phoebe. This is my battle. I'll handle it. And he starts to walk off, and Phoebe's like, Cole, I love you. And if holding on to that means I have to fight a couple of extra demons along the way, then bring them on. And then he walks closer again, and he says, unfortunately, we have no idea what we're dealing with. A strange shadow that only Prue can see. I haven't the slightest idea what that could be. And she says, so we'll figure it out together. And she hugs him and says, it won't bring Miss Owens back, but trust me, avenging an innocent feels pretty damn good. And then he smiles and like, he just seems so like happy to be like good and a part of this right now.
They are
It's kind of
so
cute.
cute. Like, ugh.
I
Like
love
the
them so
way
much.
that he's willing to give up everything to protect her is so romantic.
I know, I
He's
love
like,
it so
well, like
much.
if it'll keep you safe, like I'll leave. And she's like very much, like, no, we can do this together.
Right,
Um,
don't leave me.
Yeah.
Please don't leave me again. Yeah, they're adorable and their whole dynamic here. And of course, him always immediately jumping to like, no, I'll take care of this. I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. Especially with Phoebe. It's so sweet that that's his immediate reaction, not even like, oh, someone's after me, I'm screwed. It's immediately like someone's after me, so like they could get to Phoebe. Like
Yeah.
that's so cute.
And it also, I mean, just shows the differences in the way that magic has always worked for them. Like with Phoebe, it's always been, she's part of this power of three. So she's used to, we work together to get the thing done. Cole is evil. When he works with people, it's only out of convenience. It's never out of caring for each other and protecting each other. It's always just, well, this will get me my next move. And I never trust the person I'm working with. Whereas for the sisters and for Phoebe, this is like very normal to be like, no, like something's after you. We all fight it together.
Exactly. They're used to having each other to rely on, and Cole always was on his own, so it's a completely different like dynamic for him to get used to.
Yeah. So then we're on the road at night. It's raining, and Prue's in her car watching the woman from another car. In that car, which is Reese's car, Reese and the woman, who we find out is named Andrea, are looking at some photos. And she says she doesn't see anything remotely suspicious. And Reese tells her to just keep doing what she's doing. She says, "You really think these women are murderers?" He says, "I'm not sure what I think." She says, "See, there's something you're not telling me. Look, I know I'm a rookie and all, but I think I have a right to know what I'm looking for here." He says, "Look, Andrea, I've seen things on this case that aren't right. I don't know what I'm looking for, okay? But until I do, I want you to keep your distance and just keep following Phoebe Halliwell." And she agrees, but tells him he should take the night off and get some sleep. He says he can't until this is all over, and that she should drop the photos off at his desk and go home. So she goes, and Prue watches and gets out of her car too to follow.
I love this little moment here. Like Reese Davidson trying so hard to protect her from like, you know, the scary stuff in this situation, and like kind of we find out more about her and how she's a rookie and newer to this, which kind of explains why she fucking sucks so bad at it. But aside from that, it kind of feels like a lot of plot and kind of pushing forward what's to come next.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
mean, the one interesting thing about this scene, other than, just pushing the plot forward, is the idea of like seeing Reese in this more like gentle, protective mode. I feel like we've
Hmm.
seen him kind of like try to have conversations with Phoebe on like a nicer level early on, but in their last few reactions, he's been pretty tough with her because he suspects that she's doing something wrong. But when we see him just interacting with someone normally, we see this whole other side of his personality. And, the way he is with Andrea is really sweet and really caring. So I like
Hmm.
seeing that side of him. And, of course, the idea that they're following Phoebe and trying to figure out what's going on, it makes sense. But like you said, not very stealthy.
Agreed.
And obviously, Prue's going to try to figure out what's going on and keep following after her.
Yes, exactly.
Now, will Prue be better at following and keeping herself hidden than Andrea? To be seen.
We shall see. So then we go back to Cole's apartment, and Cole and Phoebe open the door and walk under the crime scene tape. Then Phoebe notices the blood stain on the carpet, and Cole tells her to only touch things with the back of her hand to avoid fingerprints. And they both walk around, and he stops by the bedroom saying that it's strange to be back. And he's like, "This was the first taste I ever had at a normal life. There were mornings I'd wake up next to you and just didn't feel evil. I was just a guy who was in love with a beautiful girl. I wanted it so much I started to believe my own lie." And she says, "That's not a lie anymore. We can have that. We can have a life together." And he says, "How?" And she's like, "By taking out the bad guys who want to take it away from us." And she goes back into the other room and she touches the altar and gets a premonition of Prue turning away as Reese gets attacked by those two demons we saw earlier. And she tells Cole about the premonition and the demons with the vampire teeth floating. And Cole says, "I know them. They're seekers. They have ways of gathering information fast, really fast." And he says he doesn't know how to vanquish them, but Phoebe hopes that the Book of Shadows will. and then they go. Again, just the cutest little moments here with Phoebe and Cole.
I am
Like,
like
absolutely
so
killing me.
into their love story at this point. It's not even funny. Like
I know.
and part of it obviously is because like I've seen the show before and I knew I was going to feel this way, but I've been trying
Yeah.
so hard to just like keep it at where we're at. And like at this point, I'm like as invested in them as I am Piper and Leo, if not more so.
Me too. I was thinking the same thing. Like, they are my focus right now. Like, I love them.
Yes.
God, I love it so much. And I can't wait to see
There's
it
something
continue on.
about like forbidden love that's just so exciting in
Appealing.
a TV
Yeah.
show. And theirs is obviously much more forbidden, which I feel like makes it even more like compelling.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. It really sucks you in, you know?
Absolutely. And also, I mean, Cole's really smart and helpful. I mean, telling her to touch things with the back of her hand for premonitions, knowing who the demons are. Like, it's really convenient to have him around. The same way that like Leo has all this background information, like Cole does too. So it's really
Yeah.
cool seeing the usefulness of these characters.
Yeah, I know. They each have their own ways of like kind of helping out the sisters and things like that. And it works, you know, it doesn't feel like, well, how would he know that? It works in the show and the background, you know?
Exactly. And also interesting, of course, Phoebe's premonition about Prue not doing anything while Reese gets attacked. What could
I
that be about?
know. That's very, very weird and not very Prue-like. So I'm looking forward to see how that goes, if that comes true, and why that is the case, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess just the last thing I'll say about that scene, I mean, Cole talking about how being in that apartment brings him back to like his first moments in a normal life and how Phoebe really believes that they can have that with each other and Cole isn't so convinced yet. I
Right.
think I kind of agree with him. Like, I don't know that they'll ever be able to have a normal life, the same way that Piper and Leo will never be able to have a normal life together. But maybe they could
Right.
still have something.
Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, she didn't say a normal life that they could have, but just having a life together in general, you know, she can have those mornings and we can have him like, you're not evil anymore. I think was kind of more of the point she was getting across. I think they're both well aware that it'll never be completely normal again, especially now that it's all out in the open, you know? But I do agree that I don't think that, you know, even if that is what they are hoping for, that it really could ever happen.
Yeah. So then we go to Reese's office, and Andrea walks in and sees someone sitting at the desk in the dark. And she asks if he's waiting for Inspector Davidson. He's like, "Are you expecting him?" And she says, "Not tonight. He's in the field." And that's when the second seeker floats down from the ceiling and is like, "Where?" And she's like, "I'm sorry." And then notices the second guy and is like, "I don't know." He's like, "Are you sure about that?" And she looks at the two of them. Then we cut to the hallway where Prue is walking fast and looking around, and she hears a woman scream. Then back in Reese's office, we see Andrea's body on the ground, and they said that she knew nothing, but they're sure that Reese does. Then the door breaks open and they see Prue, and both of them teleport out in like this green fade. And she sees the shadow and tries to move it. And then a man in like a black suit appears and says, "I'm beyond your powers." And he tells Andrea it's time, and her ghost steps out of her body and takes his hand. And Prue says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Death, and I'll be back." And then him and Andrea both dissolve out.
What? What a moment. What do you mean you're deaf? Lot going on here. RIP to Andrea.
R.I.P.
These seekers just killing anybody and everybody, even if it doesn't make sense
No, they're just
that they
like,
have the information.
everyone will know, so we'll
Yeah.
just kill them.
Oh, you have like the very slightest, you know, involvement in this situation. You have to know everything.
They're reminding me back to those demons from the Misha Collins episode who
I was
like
thinking the
did
same
the
thing.
like the finger pokey needle thing.
Yeah,
Except for
when I
now they
first
have
saw
vampire teeth instead.
when I first saw it, like I started this episode, I almost like expected them to do that because I forgot that it was like, completely different episode that we did already. But this is very interesting. Like, what is Death doing here? Why is Prue able to see him? And what does that mean? He'll be back? Like, is he? I mean, it's called Death Takes a Halliwell. So, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah, like, is Prue going to die? I feel like that's, if I was a first-time viewer, that's what I would be thinking here. I'm like, what is going to happen? Because, like, why can Prue see him? Why is that the episode title? Like, what
Yeah,
is going on?
I know. I'm getting a little stressed at this point as a first time viewer.
Definitely. I guess my only other comments on this scene would be the Seekers are very creepy. I liked that section with them and Andrea and the way she's kind of like doesn't know how to react,
Yeah,
but obviously is picking up on instinct that something's wrong with the situation.
right.
And one thing I'll point out is like a lot of times in TV shows, we see like the victim who's going to die have that instinct that something's wrong and then just like kind of be like, oh no, like I'm just like exaggerating, like everything's fine. And then you end up
Yeah.
dying. Like if you have that instinct, always get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, you gotta trust yourself, guys. Keep that in mind.
That is exactly how you die in a horror movie and probably
Exactly,
in
every
real life
time.
too.
Oh, I'm sure of it. So now we're back at the manor in the living room, and Phoebe is looking through the book and she finds the Seekers. Then Cole asks if it says anything about them taking on shadow form. And she's like, no, but it does have a vanquish. Do you want to see it? And he says no and backs away. And he's like, last time I touched that book, it electrocuted me. And she's like, yeah, well, that's because your intentions were evil. Maybe it knows now that you're trying to be good. And he says, better safe than sorry, and sits on the edge of the couch. Then Prue enters and says that she needs the book, and then notices Cole and asks why he's next to it. And he's like, keeping my distance, don't worry. Then Phoebe notices something off with Prue, and she tells them that she lost her innocent. And Phoebe asks if it was the Seekers, and she says that she thinks so. Then Cole says they killed Miss Owens, and now they're after Davidson. And Prue says to get to you. And he says, yes, to get to me. Maybe I should deal with this on my own. And Phoebe says, no, you can't. You said it yourself. You don't know how to vanquish them. And Prue says, unfortunately, this isn't the only evil we're up against either. And she calls for Leo, and him and Piper are Orban, and he's holding like this little salt lamp looking thing. And then Phoebe asks what it is, and he's like all happy, like, oh, it's a wedding present. And Piper very clearly does not like it at all. And then Prue asks about the Angel of Death and tells them that she met him. And Cole doesn't think he's working with the demons, and neither does Leo because he isn't evil. And Prue's like, the hell he isn't. And if I can see him, that must mean I'm supposed to stop him. And Leo says, you can't stop him. The Angel of Death always gets who he comes for. And she says, yeah, well, not this time. I need to get a hold of Davidson. If I can get him here, I can protect him better. And then Piper is worried that they will have to tell him that they're witches. And Prue's like, I don't care. I cannot stand by and watch death take that man. Then Phoebe says, but that's what you do, at least according to my premonition. You turn your back when the demons attack him. And Prue's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And Phoebe's like, I know, but it's what I saw. And she says, then you saw wrong. I am not going to let death take any more of my innocence. I'm tired of losing people. And then she asks Phoebe for Reese's card, and she leaves to go get it. And Cole excuses himself and goes into the entryway and just like shimmers out to go figure this out for himself. I kind of like that like he wants to protect them and like all of them, and wants to like, he's like, I know this isn't what they want from me, but I'm gonna go take care of this because I don't want to see them get hurt or anybody else get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's to the point of saying, I don't want to see them get hurt, but he definitely doesn't want to see Phoebe get hurt.
That's true. But I think it does bother him, the whole idea of like, because you saw how he got kind of like, yes, because of me, like these people are dying because of me, like where he kind of starts to feel a little bit of that guilt and that like, I don't want this for them,
Yeah, definitely. I think we're seeing a little bit of his selfishness slowly start to fade here. We're seeing little bits of what could become good, which I think is interesting. And I like that the show is slowly building it because I feel like if he had just done a complete 180 into like being this perfect good guy, it would have seemed so unrealistic and so out of character. So I like that it's kind of this slower movement.
Right. I agree.
Also, just like the whole beginning scene when Phoebe's like trying to put him near the book and he's like afraid of it. But like, also, Phoebe, please be fucking for real. Like, there's no way that him having good intentions is gonna make the
Change.
demon like the book is
Right.
always gonna know he's a demon.
Yeah, like it's not, it don't work like that. That was hilarious though. I love that they kind of included that little comedic element there with him not going near the book. Because it wouldn't have made so much sense if he like was able to just all of a sudden be there by the book, touching it and stuff.
I also like that he thinks it was the book that electrocuted him last time and not Prue's trap.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Well, it's all right. Either way, he would get bodied by that book.
Oh, absolutely. Also, I mean, the stuff about death here, right? And everyone trying to say the way that, like, death is neutral, right? Like, and I think that's something that really makes sense as someone going through grief, is you kind of blame whatever you can, right, for this loss.
Yeah,
So in this case, Prue is blaming the embodiment of death and seeing death as evil instead of natural part of life. So I think that that makes total sense and is really working here, especially the way that both Cole and Leo are like, no, like death isn't evil. He's not working with the demons. And she's like, no, he is evil. And obviously it's my job to stop him.
right. Like it doesn't, you can't do that. And I feel like that's what it is. Her just being someone super in denial right now because I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that like death is natural order. It's a natural part of life, you know? So for her to be so hell-bent on stopping him, it's obviously just stemming from a place of anger and denial.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we think about it, apart from her sisters, everyone Prue's loved most in the world has been taken by death. I mean, her mom, her grandmother,
Right.
the love of her life, Andy. Like, they've all been taken away from her through death. So it makes sense
Exactly.
that she sees it as this evil thing.
Exactly.
And then, Phoebe mentioning her premonition and Prue being like, no, that makes no sense. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Really interesting. And I'm excited to see like how that's going to play out.
Agreed. I'm definitely really interested in seeing what her game plan is here. Yes.
So then we're back at Davidson's office, and the crime scene unit is zipping up the body. And Reese is on the other side of the room talking to a different inspector and says, I thought I was protecting her, man, but I should have warned her. I should have told her everything. And he says he's going to take down the guy who did it. And then his pager starts going off, and he says that he needs to take it. Then on the other side of the room, we see the seeker standing there, and they start to follow. Then we cut to the hallway where Reese is walking towards the phones, and Cole appears and stops him. And he says, forget about the Halliwells. It's me you're after. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I promise. Just not here. It's not safe. And he puts his hand on Reese's shoulder, and Reese is like, don't touch me. You're under arrest, Turner. And I'm going to personally see to it. And he's like, wait, shh. And grabs him, and they shimmer out. And then the Seekers approach and see no one there. And one of them's like, did you sense that? And the other one says, Balthazar's alive.
So I love again seeing that kind of more gentler side of Reese here where he's genuinely like sad about the loss and like disappointed in himself. Like I thought I was protecting her by not telling her these things. And in reality that could have saved her at the end of the day if I had, you know? It's very like humane emotions from him and we see like, he's not just an angry inspector and trying so hard to figure out the truth, But I love seeing Davidson in his glory.
Yeah, and it really reminds us that, like, I mean, the reason he probably got into this job, right, is to protect people because he has some type of care. I mean, he's investigating, it seems like murders and things like that. So obviously he cares about the victims. And so seeing, of course, someone that he was training, that he had some type of connection to, be killed in this way and feeling like it's his fault, obviously that would take a toll on him.
Right.
I also love his entire reaction with like Cole here. It's really well done. Great chemistry between the two actors. I like the way they're playing off each other. And of course, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen now that Reese obviously is going to know about magic.
Yeah, now that they shimmered out. I love that Cole was able to sense them coming too. And yeah, like you said, Reese's whole reaction, like at first just kind of like being shocked, like here he is standing right in front of me. And then being like, you're under arrest, dude. Like
Don't
I
touch
love
me.
it. Yeah, don't touch me. It works really well.
I feel like that makes him even more suspicious though, because like the fuck you doing at the crime scene?
But it wasn't suspicious that right in the room with the cops, the seekers were standing there watching this whole thing.
No, like how did they get in?
I
Isn't
know.
this supposed to be like a very like strict crime scene, like only certain people can be there? How are they just chilling?
Nobody, I mean, I couldn't tell you. And what, they just waited for the cops to show, oh, I guess, because they were waiting for Davidson. But like, it's just really funny to me. It didn't make that much sense that they were just there in the room.
Plot's sake.
Yeah, plot's sake. So now at the mausoleum, Cole and Reese shimmer in, and Reese is on the floor, and Cole's like, I'm sorry, but it was our only chance. They might be able to track me, but they'll have a hard time sensing me in a cemetery. And Reese is like freaking the fuck out, and Cole's like, just breathe, try to calm down. And he's like, what are you? And Cole's like, someone who just saved your life. And then Cole starts walking towards him, and Reese is scared and like backing up. And he's like, try to calm down, Inspector. If I were a murderer, I'd have killed you by now. And he's like, just let me go then. I'll just walk away. And Cole's like, I can't do that. If the demons get to you, they'll find out the way to get to me is to kill Phoebe, and I can't let that happen.
So
So again, the
that
selfishness comes back. Yeah, I know he's came right back. That did not last long at all.
No, but also like I love that the only thing he cares about is Phoebe. Like it's romantic. I don't care.
No, I
It
know.
might be
It's
evil, but it's romantic as fuck.
yeah, it's horrendous and extremely toxic, but I live for it.
Yeah. He's
It
like,
makes me so happy.
they'll find out that Phoebe is the way to get to me. No.
Yeah, this simply cannot happen. And I love that. And of
Yeah.
course, Reese here, poor Reese, freaking the hell out.
No, exactly. And I mean, honestly, like valid reaction. Like sometimes I feel like we see people really underreact to finding out about magic and stuff. And I feel like his reaction is like very realistic.
Yeah, I'd be losing my mind. I'd be like, what the fuck is actually going on at all, ever? I'm lost. Like,
No,
a whole new
literally.
world opens for you, and like you react like nothing. I think the only valid reactions are like pretty much what Reese did, or just like extreme like excitement, like, oh my god, magic is real, like what, this is so crazy. Or just like absolute shock, too stunned to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Also, I love Cole's line, like, of trying to calm him down by being like, if I were a murderer, if I would have already killed you.
Yeah. Take a deep breath. I would have killed you by now if I wanted to. Like, damn. Would have calmed him down.
Like, that was really calming, Cole. Good work.
Yeah. He really
Between
knows.
that and telling him to calm down, like, you're just really good at comforting people.
He's killing it right now. Absolutely killing it.
You should actually take on a new job, leave the DA life behind, and become a therapist.
Agreed. I totally agree. And kind of like, I don't know if you noticed in the scene, like his energy was almost creepy. Like Cole was coming across not like oh, I'm trying to be there. He was very blunt and straight faced, and the way he walked towards him and like, didn't, I don't know, he just came across as very aggressive, like for no reason. I mean, I guess kind of that reason of like he's only thinking about Phoebe, and like why is he really going to care that much about a guy who has been after him for so long? But even so, it just like his whole energy here, it almost was like he enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just that, like we've been saying, like, Cole isn't really a good guy.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really have that, I need to actually, like, take care of this person and help them the way the
Right.
sisters, like, try to genuinely comfort the innocents. I think that for him, he's kind of like, why is this guy being so fucking annoying right now when I'm just trying to save his life?
Yeah, yeah. He definitely sees it more like that.
So then we're back in the manor in the living room, and Leo's like setting up the lamp, and Piper shakes her head. And Prue tells them that Davidson didn't answer the page and she's worried. Then Phoebe comes down the stairs and tells them that Cole's gone. He must have gone after Davidson alone to protect us. And she thinks he probably took him to the mausoleum. Piper asks if that's where her premonition was, and she says maybe. And they're about to go, but Prue thinks that she should just astral project because it'll be faster. And Leo reminds her that they need the power of three spell to vanquish the Seekers. And she says she'll just protect Reece and get him out of here. She's like, this is one fight that Death is not going to win.
Again, with her whole dynamic, she's very one-track minded today.
Yes. Also, I love just like the B plot of like Piper just hating this lamp. It's
I know, like such a random little thing to go in there, but it's so funny to me and I love it. And I love like Phoebe's confidence in Cole, or like you're giving him way too much credit by saying things like, "Oh, he's trying to protect us," and "Oh, this and that." Like he just cares about you, Phoebe. Like
no, literally.
he could care
But
less about your sisters.
yes, definitely. And I also like the way she knows him so well that like the mausoleum is where he would go, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I
And I
love that.
also think one interesting thing about Cole is that that mausoleum is a connection to his human side because it's where his family is buried.
Uh-huh.
So I love that that's kind of like his place that he always goes to too.
Yeah, and I love that it's kind of like their thing, like if they ever need to be in secret, if there's ever somewhere, like they always go to the mausoleum. It's like that is their spot, that's their go-to, and they know that like, if you ever need me, like that's probably where you'll find me. If we're ever to meet up and I can't find you, I'm gonna go to the mausoleum and call your name. You know what I mean? Like they've got that little thing going on together, and I love it.
Yeah. And then the only other two things, I mean, Prue saying she should astral project, very smart. I feel like they're always taking way too long because they have to drive across the fucking city to get to wherever they're going all the time.
Right.
And of course, the idea that obviously the Seekers are pretty powerful if it takes the power of three to vanquish them.
This is true.
And, just the other thing that Prue is still very like hell-bent on stopping Death.
Yeah. So now back at the mausoleum, Cole is holding Reece against the wall, and Reece says, "Just stay the hell away from me." And Cole's like, "I told you I'm not gonna hurt you." And then the Seekers teleport in, and one Seeker says, "Balthazar, I presume." And Cole turns and is like, "I'm sorry, who?" And the first Seeker says, "We sensed your shimmer. You're losing your touch." And Cole steps away from Reece and says, "Leave him out of this." And the guy says, "Why would we want him now that we have you?" And then the second one says, "Unless the human knows something Balthazar doesn't want us to know." Even though if they drained his brain, he would know that either way. And then Prue astral projects in behind Cole, and Reece is like scared, like what the hell's going on? And then Prue says, "Hi," to Cole, "Need a little help?" And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And she winks at him. And then the first Seeker says, "Well, well, well, the mighty Balthazar in bed with a witch." And Prue's like, "Don't make me sick." And then Reece makes a break for it, and the Seeker grabs him and throws him into the wall. And Prue runs over to him while Cole goes and tackles one Seeker. And then the other moves towards Prue, and she kicks him across the room. And then she sees the shadow appear next to Reece, and Cole is like losing his fight and has them both on top of him and is like calling for help. But Prue just starts trying to fight Death, but her attacks literally just go right through him. And Death is like, "I never lose. It's his time." And Prue says, "Over my dead body." And then Cole finally knocks the Seekers off of him and like looks over and sees Prue fighting literally nothing. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And then he throws electricity balls at the Seekers, but they teleport out. And then Death fades out, and Prue looks around, and Cole looks at her, and she just goes and checks on Reece. I love Cole here. Like, Prue a little help and just sees her fighting air.
You imagine you're like calling for someone to help you and they're just fighting nothing.
Yeah. What the fuck is going on,
But also like the fact that she keeps trying to fight even though like nothing is gonna happen because he's like transparent or whatever.
Yeah, it's like literally going right through him. Like that obviously kicking and like punching is not doing you well so far. So why don't
Like
you
you're just
maybe
using
try
up your
something else?
energy.
I know you're doing absolutely jack shit. So whatever.
But I love the little, like, again, there's really great chemistry between Shannon Doherty and Julian McMahon throughout this
Yeah.
scene. We see it, it's so clear. But the way that, like, Prue always reacts, like, ugh, disgusting, when anyone implies that there could possibly be any connection between her and Cole, I love to see that.
Yeah. I love that.
And, you know, the Seekers in this scene, their interaction with Cole is working for me. The way that Cole is actually being a bit good here, you know, trying to protect Reece at least a little bit. Because I feel like, you know, had this been earlier in the season, he would have been like, I don't care if you kill Reece. But here he's like protecting an innocent.
Right, exactly. We're starting to see bits and like we still have that selfishness, don't get me wrong, but we start to see more bits and pieces of like good, you know, and him kind of starting to feel that protective instinct.
Yeah. The other thing I'm also wondering, because I know you pointed it out, is the reason he's scared of them killing Reece because he still thinks they'll go after Phoebe? Because I don't know if they can read his mind. Like it might not work on demons.
Oh, that could be the case. Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
otherwise, obviously, like, yeah, if they killed him, they'd still know about Phoebe.
right. So then, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we don't really know if it works on demons or not, but I mean, it seems like it would, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Or maybe he's just really confident that they won't beat him.
Yeah, that could be the case. Which, I mean, they didn't this time.
True. So then we're in the manor in the living room, and Leo puts the lamp down in a different spot, and Piper's like, it's just so bright. He's like, well, of course it's bright. It's supposed to represent the light of eternal love. She's like, wait, does that mean we can never turn it off? And Phoebe's like, from the couch, at this rate, you're going to turn it off in record time. And Piper says she doesn't think it goes in the living room, and he points out all the other places he tried to put it, and Phoebe's like, I'm staying out of this. Then Prue and Cole come in, and Cole's carrying Reece, who's unconscious, and he says, I told you, Prue, I wouldn't revert to my demon form, and I could have used some help. She says, I was busy saving Davidson, and he puts him down on the couch and says, no, that's what I was doing. Then Phoebe asks what happened, and they tell her. Leo's worried that they were followed, but Cole says that they have to be close to a shimmer to track it. And Prue thinks that she beat death. Cole and Prue keep arguing about the Seekers coming back, and then Piper interrupts and tells Cole that he was supposed to stick with them. And he says, I was trying to protect you, all of you. And Phoebe says, by exposing yourself? He says, better me than you. And Prue says, you know, one thing you fail to consider, Cole, is no matter how dangerous Davidson is to us, you're more dangerous. And he starts trying to defend himself, and Phoebe explains that she meant, you're part of our lives now. You know almost everything's about us. If you had lost, and he says, the Seekers could use what I know to destroy you. So I guess they can learn from demons.
Yeah.
And they look at each other, and Leo says he'll go back with the elders and orbs out. Then Reece wakes up and sees this and is freaking out and draws his gun, and Prue's like, Inspector, you hit your head. He's like, I didn't hit it that hard. Whatever I just saw, it's not because I hit my head. And Prue tells them that they're on his side and they're the good guys. And he says, I don't know what you people are, but good isn't topping my list of ideas. And Cole says, be that as it may, we can't let you leave. And he like cocks the gun and says, try to stop me. And Cole says, Inspector, you're in a room with 3 witches and a demon. You really think that gun's gonna help? And Prue takes a step closer and says, look, I don't really know how to tell you this, but it's not just demons that are after you. The angel of death wants you too. Now, please, if you stay here, we can protect you. He says, I'm not afraid of death, and looks at Cole. You, on the other hand, are a different matter. And he leaves, and Cole is about to follow him, but the sisters stop him, and he says he's going to expose you. Piper says, Cole, we don't kidnap cops and then hold them against their will. And Phoebe says, but we do follow them and protect them against their will. So the sisters go and they tell Cole to stay, and Prue decides that she's going to do her own thing too.
So, fun scene here. I kind of love this whole, like, I love it every time they have, like, all 5 of them together, like, in the room, kind of, going back and forth, figuring things out. And again, the chemistry between Shannon Doherty and Julian McMahon is, like, so
Yeah.
good here. Like, when they argue and this and that. And then Phoebe, of course, explaining, like, no, 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 what we meant was, like, if they get your knowledge, like, they could destroy us. And that's a factor that he hadn't considered. And I mean, I like their little game plan to follow him and kind of try to protect him like that, even though they don't really know how right now. And then Prue wanting to still go after the Angel of Death.
I also
With the
love,
foot
the
cylinder.
opening scene with the lamp, continuing that and it representing eternal love and Phoebe's little comment that they're gonna make it go off in like record time.
Yeah. I love it so much.
But also the way she's staying kind of out of their like little married fight. I think that really worked for me. We kind of see that new dynamic of the family relationship getting further developed there. I like the way that they still have to explain to Cole kind of the way they do things because his instinct is just to do like whatever it takes to get your goal.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, we don't kidnap people.
Right. We can't do that. It's not how we do it here. I love that because it still shows that difference that, like, works, for them to not always be on the same page about how to go about these things.
Yes. And also Cole just giving up their whole like realities, like 3 witches and a demon here.
Yeah. Because he doesn't, at this point, he thinks, like, you can't win against us. Like, we're going to take you.
Yeah.
So now it's the morning time and we're at the beach and Prue is doing a spell to summon death. And then he appears and says, "Are you sure that you really want me?" And then it's like pauses and is like, "Come on, I don't have all day. So what is it? Took your husband and you want him back? Your brother? Your mother?" And she gets all teary-eyed and she's like, "Don't talk about her. Don't talk about my mother." And he said, "That should have been an easy guess with those sad little girl eyes." She's like crying at this point and is like, "All right, you want Reece Davidson and it's my job to protect him. So what do you want from me? What do I have to do?" And he says, "That's not why you called me." And she's like, "Yes, it is." And he says, "No, that's an excuse. You're mad at me for taking Mummy." And she's like, "I told you not to talk about her." And he says, "What were you, 10? I'm just guessing now." And she's like, "Stop it." And he says, "Younger, I bet. And now you think by saving this, which is it, Davidson? You think that you'll have beaten me somehow, that somehow you'll have finally won." And Prue's like, "Just go away." And he's like, "No, you wanted me and now you've got me. You're wasting precious time." And she's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't." And he's like, "It's not my time you're wasting, it's yours. You refuse to accept me for what I am, which keeps you from mourning me." She says, "You don't know me. You don't know anything about me." And he says, "But I've seen it so many times before. The anger, the pain. You lock up your tears and angrily steel yourself against me, as if I was the ultimate evil." And she says, "You are the ultimate evil." And he says, "No, I'm not good or evil. I just am. I'm inevitable." And she's like, "What do I have to do to save Davidson?" And he laughs and says, "You still don't get it, do you? There's nothing you can do." And she says, "I can't just let an innocent man die." And he says, "You have to let him die. You have no choice. And until you can learn to accept that, you'll just keep missing the bigger picture." And she's like, "What bigger picture?" And he says, "I'll show you." And she looks at him as he offers his hand and says, "Oh, don't worry, it's not your time, or not just yet anyway." And she takes his hand and they fade out together. Oh
Mm.
my God. Again, I know we've said it before and we'll say it again. Shannon Doherty's portrayal of emotion is, like, incredible. Like, it gets you every time.
No, she's so good in this scene. Like when I was
Yeah,
watching it, I was like so sad for her. Like really felt it with her. Like she's just so good.
right. You really felt that all coming out in that moment, and it felt so genuinely real and, like, understandable, where she's like having this almost like panic attack moment because it's all reaching the surface.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like Death here. Like I like
Me
the way
too.
he kind of
That tough
talks with
love.
her and like gives her that, yeah, exactly, that tough love he gives.
Yeah. The full truth and, like, "You've been putting this off for far too long. Like, you got to do it. Like, someone's got to say it to you, you know?"
Yeah. And this idea that like she's wasting her time being angry because, like, if you just spend all of your time so focused on bad things that have happened to you, you're not really living your life and experiencing that moments. And when he
Hmm.
says, like, you're gonna lose your whole life to this, and then I'm gonna be back for you, and you're gonna have done nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. A lot that she needs to get through and realize.
Yeah, and I think it all connects to, her saying you are the ultimate evil, which connects us back to what we were talking about before, in that death isn't good or bad, but Prue only sees it as bad because she's so
Exactly.
hurt and hasn't truly dealt with it, like he's telling her to.
Exactly.
But I guess it's hard because even if she wasn't so convinced that death was so evil, like, how do you accept that the innocent that you're so sure you're supposed to protect, you just have to let die?
Right. Yeah, it's like either way, it's not an okay thing to accept. It's not something that's gonna make it any easier to think like, well, there is the option of saving this man and I can't.
Yeah, because as the charmed ones, I mean, they save people from death all the time. But I guess when they do it, it's again, like we've been talking about, the show talks so much about destiny. It's not really their time yet. But I guess for Davidson, it is. And so that's what's kind of like hard and confusing about it, I guess.
Right. Especially the fact that like she knows that it's going to happen and there's nothing she can do and it's just like driving her crazy. Like usually when their innocents die, they don't have death telling you, "Oh yeah, this is going to happen and you can't stop it." Like usually they don't know that they can't stop it. You know what I mean? They don't know that it's their time, which I think makes it a little more difficult here.
Yeah. Because I mean, I guess it's like that idea that even if you know someone's death is coming, right? Because they're sick or whatever the case may be, it doesn't make it easier to deal with and easier to accept. So I think that's kind
Exactly.
of part of the metaphor here too.
Exactly.
So then we're at the cemetery and it's Andrea's funeral going on, and we see Reese standing in the back. About 100 feet away, Piper and Phoebe are in a car watching, and Phoebe's on the phone with Cole, who hasn't heard from Prue, and she says, I love you, and then hangs up. And Phoebe says to Piper, okay, so now what? And she says, well, we can't crash the funeral. I guess we just watch from here. And Phoebe says, I don't understand. You tell a guy that death is after him and he goes to a cemetery? How smart is that? Then over at the funeral, we see the Seekers walk up to Reese and he looks at them. He says, you want me? Fine. But these people have been through enough. And he starts to walk off and they follow. And Piper points this out to Phoebe and they get out of the car to follow too.
I love this so much, like that whole him being like, I don't fear death, like whatever, like take me, but these people have been through enough. And like his immediate thought is to go to Andrea's funeral and like still show his support. Like that's such a like we're seeing so much of like his sweet side in this episode, you
Yeah.
know?
No, it's showing us that, I mean, Reese, beyond being an innocent, is a hero. It's bringing
Yeah.
me back to like Andy, who's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. I think Reese is very much willing to do the same. He's like, if it protects other people, if I have to die, I die.
Yeah. He's a hero. He really is a genuine hero. So now we are in a mausoleum and it's not Cole's, it's a different one. And Reese and the Seekers go in, and then one sticks a thing in the door to block it from opening. And Davidson is facing away while they are behind him. And he turns to them like after taking like a deep breath and turns with his gun drawn and shoots at them a bunch of times, but it has no effect and it's just going through them and breaking stuff behind them. And he looks super scared right now. And Piper and Phoebe are outside watching, trying to get in, and Phoebe's yelling for him to run. And one of the Seekers floats around behind him. And he's like, you've been so brave, Inspector. Don't ruin it now. Where's Balthazar? And he says, Balthazar. And Prue and Death arrive on the other side of the room and like just fade in. And the second Seeker bites the back of his neck and Prue turns away. And Death is like, it's his time, just like it was your mother's time. And then Phoebe and Piper start calling for Prue to open the gate, but she's still looking away and just very emotional. And then the Seekers keep draining Reese and his knowledge, and Death says, stop fighting me. And Reese's body is on the floor, and Phoebe and Piper are looking in. then the Seekers teleport out, and Death walks over to Reese, and Prue looks over, and then his ghost comes out, and he takes Death's hand, and they fade out together. So the premonition came true.
This is a
Very
really
sad.
interesting scene. It's
Mhm.
interesting how quickly Prue truly took this lesson and the way that she dealt with it, right? Because even though she has to accept his fate, she can't wash, obviously. And it's obviously very, very difficult for her. And the way that obviously Piper and Phoebe aren't understanding what's going on, their instinct is still to try to save Reese because they
Right,
haven't had this same experience of Prue of learning that it's his time and there's nothing to do to fight death ultimately.
right. There's nothing they can do.
And I think, again, that's a metaphor for a time when you can't save everybody and death is inevitable in life. So sometimes, even if you want to keep fighting for someone to stay alive, you can't always meet that goal. And the way that, like, Davidson just accepts his fate after he realizes, like, there's fear and there's something like there's not anger in him, which I think is really interesting. Like, there's fear and there's sadness, but there's no real like anger in him, which I think is really interesting to see.
Seriously, there's no anger in him. We see, yeah, like you said, that fear and more genuine emotion, like more caring for other people, not wanting to die, but willing to accept, like, this is what I need to do, you know?
Mhm.
And I like that he still tried to fight, like, he did his best, knowing that that was all he could do, and probably knew that it was not gonna work in his favor anyways. And I don't know, he was being very brave for this whole situation, and, like, good for him, man. I'm gonna miss him.
Yeah, RIP to Davidson. It was lovely having you around.
Yeah. Say goodbye to one of Jess's crushes.
I know, I'm always losing a crush in this show.
Seriously. They come and
They
go.
either disappear for 9 episodes in a row or are killed.
Yep, pretty much how it goes.
So then we come back from the commercial break and we're still in the mausoleum, and Piper and Phoebe come in and look at Prue. Phoebe asks if she's okay, and Prue's crying. She says, I don't know. Piper asks what happened, and Phoebe says, did the demons do something to you? And she says, no. And Piper says, how did you even get in here? She says, death brought me. I don't completely understand it myself. And Piper says, Prue, how could you stand there and let him die? She says, because it was his time, all right. I wanted to save him, but I couldn't. Piper says, you didn't even try. Prue says, I'm sorry. And she walks over to Reese and kneels next to him and starts crying and taking his hand and apologizing over and over. And it's heartbreaking.
It's so heartbreaking. I hate that. Like, poor Prue has really had to go through it lately and kind of learn to understand herself and her emotions. She's being forced to finally pay attention to herself and not so much only her sisters. And having to accept that whole idea and try to like change your whole mindset after something you felt for so long, you know? It's got to be insanely hard. And it was kind of just forced upon her really quickly and abruptly. And obviously the other sisters, they don't really understand it because they aren't in her shoes. So I understand them being a little bit like what the hell is wrong with you? Why didn't you try or do anything? You know, even though they're still kind of like being a little aggressive, they're not too bad because they know that there really is something going on with her with the whole death thing.
Yeah, and it's really this really beautiful moment of acceptance for Prue's character. So seeing that death isn't evil, right? It's a part of life, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't mean she doesn't feel badly about having to let this innocent die. So I like that. As hard as it is to watch and as painful of a scene as it is, it's a really beautiful moment and it's really strong and effective.
Exactly. So now back in the manor, it's nighttime and we're in the entryway and the phone's ringing. So Cole walks over to answer it, but then a seeker appears right in front of him. And Cole's like, you ever hear of a doorbell? And he says, we thought we'd surprise you. And he looks up and the other seeker is like weirdly perched at the top of the stairs and flies down and tackles Cole and like Cole kicks him off, and then Phoebe on the answering machine tells Cole to get out of the manor, but obviously it's too late. Then it cuts to Piper's car, and Prue asks if she should ask for project there, and they think that no, it's best if we stay together. And they almost get into an accident, but just keep on driving. And then back in the manor, Cole keeps fighting off the Seekers, and he's throwing electricity balls, but they're dodging them. And eventually one of them tackles him and knocks him out. And then the first Seeker says, "Now let's see what you don't want us to know." And the second Seeker is about to bite him when the sisters walk in the door. And Prue throws him across the room with her telekinesis. Then Phoebe starts fighting the other one. And Piper goes over to Cole, who is waking up, and she gets him up. Then Phoebe and Prue are fighting one together, and the sisters get together and do the spell. And the Seekers start melting, catching on fire, and then eventually blow up. And then Phoebe goes over to Cole and kisses him. And Prue's like, "Well, at least we saved one." And Phoebe's like, "Wow, did you hear that? You just reached innocence status." And he's like, "And that's good?" And she's like, "To Prue, no one is more important." And then Prue smiles, and Leo orbs in. And Piper says, "Nice timing, you missed the show." And he says, "I know, but they told me to miss it. Are you okay?" Turning to Prue and asking her. And Prue's like, "Yeah." And Piper says, "What do you mean they told you to miss it? The elders were behind this whole thing?" And he says, "No, but they knew they had to let Prue learn a lesson by herself, the hard way." And Cole's like, "What lesson?" And Prue says that death is not the evil. And she walks away. And then Leo's like, "She just needs some time." And Piper says, "And we need a maid, because the place is destroyed." I love this whole fight scene here. I was thinking the same thing once Prue said that, like, about him, like, "At least we saved one." I was like, whoa, like, that's a step up for Cole, where Prue's considering him as someone that they need to protect, you know?
Yeah, I never thought I'd see the day where Prue would consider Cole to be an innocent, someone they needed to save. So
Exactly. I love it.
me too.
And, with Prue's whole lesson here, you can see that, like we said before, just because she knows it's true, that doesn't mean that it's easy. It's not like oh, learned my lesson, like, happy-go-lucky, it's like, she still needs a lot of time to process everything that she just went through,
Yeah. I also want to point out where, Piper's asking here, like, oh, the elders were behind this whole thing. Because I think that's something I brought up, I don't remember how many episodes ago, but was whether the elders were in control of, like, kind of what they're fighting and what goes on in their lives. And I remember you saying that there was some power above them. And I think this is showing us that, right? Like, they have some foreknowledge, but they don't control the universe.
Exactly. Yeah, they can see those things, but destiny runs its course.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else there?
I guess just that the whole Vanquish and the whole scene worked for me. This whole,
Yeah.
fight
It was a
scene
good fight scene, effective vanquish. I mean, no notes. It
worked.
worked for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we're in the living room and Piper and Leo walk in and Piper's like, "So I was thinking, and this lamp is not worth fighting over. So if you love it, then I love it." And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah. I mean, life is too short." And they kiss, and as they're like kissing, they accidentally bump into the table and the lamp gets knocked over and breaks. And Piper says, "Now I love it even more." And they both smile.
So wrap up to our little B plot of the episode.
But also, like, does this mean that Piper and Leo's love is gonna die? Is this foreshadowing that? Because I really hope not.
I know, like, why did it? I mean, not very sturdy for eternal love. I don't know.
Thanks.
But I do think that was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's also, I feel like, one of those things where, like, if you ever move in with a partner, like, that's such a thing that, like, you're gonna hate some of their stuff, but you might have to keep it around to make them happy.
Right, gonna have to compromise for sure. So now we're back at the beach in the morning, and Prue is sitting on the rocks watching the waves go by, and then Death appears behind her and says, "You contemplating the tides? Can't control them any more than me." And she says, "I get that you're not evil, but what I don't get is why I wasn't supposed to fight the demons." And he says, "Well, you were alone and outnumbered." And she says, "I still could have fought." And he says, "But you would have lost, Prue." And he says, "How did you know my name?" And he says, "I read it off my list. It was the next one after Reece Davidson's." And she was like, "You were coming for me." And he says, if you hadn't stopped fighting me, yes. That's why you were able to see me. It's the bigger picture, Prue. Focusing on all your anger against me leaves you vulnerable to the real evils of this world. You'd do well to remember that in the future. And she looks away, and he's like, what? And she says, I don't know, I've been mad at you for so long, ever since Mom died. I don't know how else to be. And he says, you grieve, and then you move on. And they look at each other, and he fades out, and Prue just starts crying. An emotional final scene of the episode. That was.
It really was. It's a really strong ending. I like this moment. I feel like some of it, especially that beginning part, is a little bit repetitive of what we already took away as the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the way he explains it to her, like the reason you weren't meant to kill those demons is because you were alone and outnumbered. So you wouldn't have won the fight. And also the idea that she was able to see him because he was coming for her is interesting.
Exactly. I mean, I like this whole dynamic. We kind of already learned the lesson here. It's more of just like a wrap up to that whole idea. And we figure out, why she was able to see death, why he was coming after her, and all of that.
Final thoughts on the episode?
Again, another one that I've never really considered as like, oh, one of my favorites, but it was a really strong episode. And the emotion here and, the slight comedic elements and the factor that each character played, like, I think it worked really well for me. And I actually ended up enjoying it a lot more, than I thought I would.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. I always remember it just kind of like as the vampire episode where they kill Reese. Like that's kind of my memory
Yeah.
of this episode. But kind of going through it, it's a really important episode for
Mhm.
Prue. I think we see a lot of growth in her character. We saw growth for her in the last episode as well. And I really want to see how these lessons will continue to affect Prue. Hopefully they do. Hopefully it's like an ongoing story for her now that she's
Right.
learned these two things, about having more fun in life and also about accepting that death is part of life and learning to move on.
Yeah, there's a lot for her to kind of get through here. And I hope that we get to see that progression continue on and not just kind of let go of this lesson, because it was an important episode for her. And it's something she said, we've always seen. Like, it didn't feel like out of nowhere that they all of a sudden are bringing up her anger towards death. We've seen from the start her inability to acknowledge, like, a lot when it comes to losses, when it comes to her parents, Andy, like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And now it's finally coming to the surface and coming to light. And it fits really well with her character. And I think that we needed to see this from her.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to reach out to us or follow us on social media, we're on Instagram and TikTok at rewitched_pod. Or you can send us an email to rewitched.pod@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to subscribe to our Patreon, we have several monthly tiers available at patreon.com/rewitchedpodcast. Either way, we appreciate you listening and hope you'll join us back next time for Season 3, Episode 17, Free Witched.